Dr. Sarah Chen stood motionless in the excavation chamber, her headlamp illuminating the impossible. The crystalline structure before her pulsed with a faint blue light, its geometric patterns far too precise to be natural. She'd found similar artifacts on 3 other worlds, but this one was different. This one was active. "Control, are you seeing this?" she whispered into her comm, careful not to disturb the dust-laden air. The research station's sensors had been recording since she'd first detected the energy signature, but she needed verbal confirmation. Needed to know she wasn't alone with this discovery. "Affirmative, Doctor. Energy patterns match the others, but magnitude is significantly higher." Dr. Patel's voice crackled through her helmet speakers. "Whatever it is, it's been waiting for someone to find it." Sarah reached out with a gloved hand, stopping just short of touching the crystal surface. Its light pulsed faster, as if responding to her proximity. After 15 years of searching for proof of alien intelligence, she'd found not just evidence, but something that was clearly meant to be found. The question was, by whom? 2 kilometers above, aboard the research vessel Magellan, Admiral Marcus Hayes watched the feed from Sarah's helmet cam with growing unease. In 30 years of naval service, he'd learned to trust his instincts. Right now, they were screaming that this discovery would change everything. "Dr. Chen," he spoke into the comm, his deep voice carrying the weight of command. "I'm implementing Security Protocol Alpha 7. No data transmissions leave this system until we understand what we're dealing with." He could hear the frustration in her silence before she responded. "Admiral, this is the breakthrough we've been waiting for. The academic community needs TOE. What the academic community needs," he cut in, "is irrelevant compared to humanity's security. That artifact is technological, which means someone made it, someone who's been watching us find the others." The Admiral turned to his tactical display, checking the positions of the 3 destroyers accompanying the Magellan. Standard protocol called for minimal military escort on scientific expeditions, but Hayes had pulled strings to get extra security for this mission. Another decision his instincts had pushed him toward. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "we're detecting energy spikes from the other dig sites. All 3 previous artifacts just woke up." Hayes felt his jaw tighten. Not a coincidence. The artifacts were communicating, forming some kind of network, and humanity had just triggered it. Back in the excavation chamber, Sarah was running every scan her equipment could manage. The crystal's patterns were shifting, rearranging themselves into new configurations. "It's not just a beacon," she muttered, more to herself than the comm. "It's a message, or maybe a warning." Her specialized visor began translating the geometric shapes, comparing them to linguistic patterns from every known human civilization. The crystal's light suddenly intensified, and a holographic display erupted from its surface, filling the chamber with streams of alien text. "Admiral," she breathed, "you need to see this. The patterns, they're not just similar to the writing we found in the ruins on Proxima b. They're identical. These artifacts, they're all connected to the same civilization, the one that vanished right around the time humanity started developing agriculture." Hayes leaned forward in his command chair, studying the holographic symbols through Sarah's feed. "You're saying someone knew we were coming 12,000 years ago?" "No," Sarah replied, her voice tight with revelation. "I'm saying they never left. The artifacts, the ruins, the mysterious disappearances of our probes in certain sectors, they've been watching us, guiding us, or hurting us," Hayes finished, the pieces falling into place. "Doctor, pack up your equipment. We're leaving. Now." The Admiral's order came just as Sarah's translation program cracked the first line of text. Her eyes widened as the alien symbols resolved into English. "Protocol Omega Quarantine Status Revocated. Species Evaluation Commencing." Alarms blared throughout the Magellan as massive energy signatures appeared at the system's edge. Hayes watched as his tactical display lit up with dozens of incoming vessels, their designs unlike anything in humanity's database. "Battle stations," he commanded, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "And get me a quantum link to Earth Defense Command. Tell them." He paused, knowing his next words would reshape human history. "Tell them first contact is no longer theoretical, and it's not going to be friendly." Sarah felt the chamber's temperature drop as the artifact's light turned from blue to a deep warning red. More text scrolled through the air around her. "Species. Human. Development status. XCEVVD parameters. Containment protocols failed. Initiating NTRV Ention." As she rushed to pack her equipment, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just failed a test they never knew they were taking. The crystal's light pulsed one final time, then went dark, leaving her in the beam of her headlamp. Above, Hayes watched the alien ships approach with geometric precision. Their formation was perfect, rehearsed. Like they'd done this before. The thought sent a chill down his spine. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. Text only." Hayes nodded, and the message appeared on his main screen. "You have developed beyond your designated boundaries. Your species' rate of expansion and technological advancement exceeds acceptable parameters. The preservers of order will now implement corrective measures. Resistance is evolutionarily inadvisable." The Admiral allowed himself a grim smile. Whoever these preservers were, they'd just made their first mistake. Telling humans not to resist was like telling a star not to shine. "All ships," he commanded, "execute contingency plan Theta." "Dr. Chen," he switched to the private channel. "I hope you collected enough data, because we're about to show our visitors why humanity's evolution has always been guided by one principle above all others." "What's that?" Sarah asked, stepping into the elevator that would bring her back to the surface. "Survival," Hayes replied, watching the alien fleet draw closer. "At any cost." The artifact chamber sealed itself as Sarah departed, its crystal dark but not dormant. Deep within its structure, quantum processes continued their observation and analysis. The results were clear. Humanity had exceeded their projected development curve by 3,247 years. The preservers of order had miscalculated, and now they would all face the consequences of underestimating humanity's potential. In orbit, Hayes prepared his small fleet for what would likely be a hopeless battle. But as he watched the alien ships approach, he realized something that gave him hope. Their formation was perfect, too perfect, predictable. And if there's one thing humans excelled at, it was disrupting other beings' carefully laid plans. "All ships," he commanded, "scatter pattern Delta. Let's show these preservers why evolution favors adaptability over order." The human vessels broke formation, each choosing a random vector. It wasn't retreat. It was the first move in a game humanity had been unconsciously preparing to play since they first looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. The game of survival. And humanity had never lost it yet. "Incoming transmission from the Preserver's flagship," the communications officer announced, her voice steady despite the tension filling the Magellan's bridge. "They're requesting. No, demanding. Immediate audience with Earth's governing authority." Admiral Hayes watched as the alien vessels maintained their perfect formation, a geometric pattern that spoke of technological superiority and absolute confidence. Their ships resembled crystalline structures, similar to the artifacts they'd found planetside, but on a massive scale. "Send them our response," Hayes ordered. "Tell them Earth's leadership will meet with them, but only after they withdraw to a distance of 1 astronomical unit from any human settlement." The reply came instantly. "Your species is not in a position to make demands. Compliance is mandatory. Resistance will result in demonstration of consequences." Before Hayes could respond, one of the alien vessels broke formation. It moved with impossible grace toward New Darwin, humanity's smallest colony in the system, a research outpost housing 37 scientists. Get me New Darwin control. Hayes barked, but it was already too late. A beam of coherent light, so bright it overwhelmed the Magellan's filters, lanced out from the alien ship. When the glare faded, the outpost was simply gone. No explosion, no debris field. The entire facility had been erased from existence, along with everyone inside. Life signs? Hayes asked, though he already knew the answer. None, sir. Whatever they used, it didn't just destroy the outpost. It removed all trace that it ever existed. In the silence that followed, Sarah Chen's voice came through the comm, tight with controlled rage. Admiral, I finished preliminary analysis of the artifact's data. You need to see this immediately. Hayes glanced at the alien fleet, still maintaining their perfect formation. Make it quick, Doctor. The Preservers, they're not just one species. They're a consortium of perfected civilizations. Each member race has engineered themselves to what they consider the ideal form of their species. They see uncontrolled evolution as chaos, a threat to their version of cosmic order and humanity. Hayes asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. We're developing too fast, adapting too quickly. The artifacts were meant to monitor our progress, ensure we stayed within acceptable parameters of advancement. We didn't just fail their test, Admiral. We scared them. A new message flashed across the Magellan's main screen. Your species will now witness the price of defiance. Observe. The alien fleet moved in perfect synchronization, their ships forming a new pattern. Energy began building between them, creating a web of light that reminded Hayes of a spider's web. At the center, a sphere of pure energy grew steadily larger. Sir, his tactical officer reported, that energy reading. It's similar to what they used on New Darwin, but orders of magnitude larger. If they release that kind of power. Get me Earth Defense Command, Hayes ordered. Priority Alpha. And prepare to transmit everything we've recorded. He turned to the main screen, watching the energy sphere continue to grow. Dr. Chen, how much of the artifact's data did you manage to decrypt? Enough to understand their weakness, Sarah replied. Their technology, their tactics, even their thought processes, they're all based on perfect order and predictability. They've engineered chaos out of their existence, and that's why they fear us. Hayes allowed himself a grim smile. Because humans are anything but predictable. Exactly. Every simulation they've run shows humanity continuing to evolve, to adapt, to change. We represent everything they've tried to eliminate from their version of civilization. The energy sphere between the alien ships had grown to massive proportions, its light casting eerie shadows across the Magellan's Bridge. Hayes made his decision. All ships, execute Pattern Omega. Dr. Chen, upload everything you've decoded to the quantum network. Earth needs to understand what we're dealing with. The human vessels began moving in seemingly random patterns, each one following a different trajectory. To the Preservers' perfect formations, it must have looked like chaos. And in a way it was. Sir, his tactical officer called out, the energy sphere, it's destabilizing. Their pattern, our movements are disrupting their synchronization. Hayes watched as ripples of discord spread through the alien formation. Their perfect geometry began to waver, the energy sphere flickering as its containment field fluctuated. They'd never dealt with true randomness. Sarah realized, her voice excited. Their systems are designed for perfect order, perfect prediction. They can't adapt to genuine chaos. The alien fleet's formation broke entirely as they struggled to maintain control of their weapon. The energy sphere collapsed in on itself, sending feedback cascading through their linked systems. A new message appeared. This behavior is unacceptable. You will submit to correction or face extinction. Transmission from Earth Defense Command. Sir, the comm officer announced. They're mobilizing the entire fleet. And, sir, they're implementing Protocol Phoenix. Hayes felt his breath catch. Protocol Phoenix was humanity's last resort defense strategy, developed in secret over decades. It was based on a simple premise. If humanity ever faced a technologically superior enemy, they would respond not by matching that technology, but by going in the opposite direction. Understood, Hayes replied. All ships begin emergency jump preparations. Dr. Chen, your research just became the most important data in human history. The preservers thought they were containing us, guiding our development. Instead, they showed us exactly how to beat them. As the human ships prepared to jump to safety, Hayes sent one final message to the alien fleet. You fear chaos. You fear unpredictability. Then you were right to fear humanity, because we are evolution incarnate, and we will not be preserved. The Magellan and its escorts vanished into hyperspace just as the preservers launched another attack. Their perfect weapon passed through empty space, finding no target to eliminate. In the jump tunnel, Hayes turned to his tactical display, where data from Earth showed humanity's response already beginning. Shipyards were retooling, weapon systems were being modified, and defense strategies were being rewritten, all based on a principle the preservers couldn't comprehend: controlled chaos. They wanted to preserve order, Hayes murmured. Instead, they just started a war against the most adaptable species in known space. Sarah's voice came through the comm, thoughtful despite their narrow escape. Admiral, I've decoded more of the artifact's data. The preservers, they'd done this before, dozens of times, but always to younger civilizations, species just beginning to reach for the stars. And now they've picked a fight with one that's already there. Hayes finished. One that spent its entire existence adapting to overcome superior forces. As the Magellan raced toward Earth, carrying warning and hope in equal measure, Hayes couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The preservers had spent millennia monitoring humanity, trying to ensure they developed according to plan. They never realized they were helping create their own worst nightmare, a species that had evolved specifically to overcome the limitations they tried to impose. The war for humanity's right to evolve had begun. The holographic display in Earth's Crisis Command Center showed humanity's territory in red, steadily shrinking as the preservers' forces advanced through colonial systems. Dr. Sarah Chen watched the progression with growing frustration, knowing that each lost point of light represented thousands of evacuated colonists. They're pushing us back systematically, Admiral Hayes observed, his uniform wrinkled from too many hours in the command center. Everything they do follows perfect mathematical progressions. No waste, no deviation. Sarah nodded, manipulating the hologram to show the pattern of preserver attacks. Their efficiency would be beautiful if it wasn't being used to destroy us. But look here. She highlighted several failed offensive operations. Every time we respond chaotically, their systems struggle to adapt. The doors slid open, and Dr. Yuki Tanaka strode in, her cybernetics glinting under the harsh lights. As head of Earth's Advanced Defense Research, she'd been working nonstop to decode the preserver's technology. We've cracked another layer of the artifact's data, she announced, plugging the data crystal into the holographic projector. And what we found changes everything. The display shifted, showing complex genetic sequences alongside technological schematics. The preservers didn't just engineer their societies, Yuki explained. They engineered themselves. Every member species has modified their own DNA to eliminate what they consider evolutionary waste. Waste? Hayes asked, studying the data. Creativity, intuition, the ability to make cognitive leaps, everything that makes intelligence messy and unpredictable. Yuki's cybernetic eye whirred as she focused on specific sequences. They traded evolution for perfection. Sarah felt a chill as the implications sank in. They're not just afraid of our technological development. They're afraid of our potential. Exactly, Yuki confirmed. Their predictions show humanity developing in ways they can't comprehend. We're not just a threat to their order, we're a threat to their understanding of what intelligence can be. A junior officer rushed in, his face pale. "Admiral, the preservers have begun broadcasting on all frequencies. They're offering terms." The main screen lit up with the transmission. "Your resistance, while impressive, is futile. Accept our guidance, and your species will be elevated. Continue to resist, and we will be forced to implement complete evolutionary reset." Hayes straightened his uniform. "Send them our response. Come and try." The next hours were a blur of activity as Earth implemented Protocol Phoenix. Sarah watched in amazement as humanity embraced its greatest strength: unpredictability. Colonial forces abandoned energy shields in favor of rotating electromagnetic fields that confused preserver targeting systems. Ships began using randomized jump patterns that no algorithm could predict. Ground forces deployed modified versions of ancient weapons alongside cutting-edge technology, creating combat scenarios the preservers' perfect tactical systems couldn't process. "They're calling it evolutionary warfare," Yuki noted, showing footage of the first successful counterattack. A small fleet of Earth ships had used deliberately primitive nuclear weapons to overwhelm the preservers' advanced shields. "We're not just fighting their technology, we're fighting their entire worldview." Sarah's research team had made another breakthrough, decoding more of the artifact's hidden data. "The preservers have encountered species like us before," she revealed, "but always in their infancy, before they developed enough to pose a real threat. We're the first ones they found too late." "Too late for what?" Hayes asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. "Too late to prevent us from embracing chaos as a strength." Sarah brought up new data streams. Every other species they've preserved was guided toward order and predictability from the start. But humanity, we developed in isolation. We learned to thrive on uncertainty. A tactical officer interrupted with urgent news. "Sir, the preservers are deploying something new. Energy readings are off the charts." The holographic display showed a massive construct emerging from hyperspace. Unlike the crystalline perfection of other preserver ships, this one was darker, almost organic in appearance. "That's impossible," Yuki whispered, her cybernetic systems struggling to analyze the readings. "They're using chaos technology. They've created a weapon that harnesses random quantum fluctuations." Hayes smiled grimly. "They're trying to beat us at our own game. But they're making a fundamental mistake." "What's that?" Sarah asked, watching the strange vessel approach Earth's defensive line. "They're trying to control chaos, to weaponize it through perfect equations and predictable systems." Hayes turned to his communications officer. "Send word to all ships. Implement Operation Wildcard." Sarah had helped design Operation Wildcard, though she'd never thought they'd actually use it. It was less a battle plan and more an anti-plan. Every ship captain would act on pure instinct, following no pattern or strategy that could be predicted or countered. The result was beautiful in its disorder. Earth's ships moved like a swarm of angry insects, each following its own random path while somehow maintaining a collective purpose. The preserver's chaos weapon fired, its effects rippling through space-time itself, but it couldn't hit targets that weren't following any logical pattern. "Their weapon," Yuki observed, "it's destabilizing. They can't maintain control when faced with true chaos." The massive preserver vessel began to break apart, its attempts to contain and direct chaos backfiring spectacularly. The quantum energies it had tried to harness turned inward, creating a cascade of random effects that their perfect systems couldn't handle. As the vessel collapsed in on itself, a new message came through. "This is not possible. Your species defies fundamental laws of development." Hayes dictated humanity's response. "No, we embody them. Evolution isn't about reaching perfection. It's about endless adaptation. And you just showed us exactly how to adapt to you." The battle marked a turning point, but Sarah knew it was only the beginning. The preservers would analyze their defeat, try to develop countermeasures, attempt to predict the unpredictable. They would fail because they couldn't comprehend a fundamental truth about humanity. We were never meant to be preserved. We were meant to change. Earth's orbital shipyards had been transformed. Where once sleek vessels of advanced alloys took shape, now rougher, almost primitive-looking ships were under construction. Dr. Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck as workers attached what appeared to be 20th-century nuclear missiles to a state-of-the-art hull. "It looks wrong, doesn't it?" Admiral Hayes commented, joining her at the window. "Like we're going backwards." "Sometimes you have to go backwards to move forward," Sarah replied, checking data on her tablet. "The preservers still haven't managed to adapt to our hybrid warfare approach. Their predictive systems can't handle the combination of primitive and advanced technology." A holographic display activated, showing the latest battle reports. Earth forces had successfully defended 3 more colonial systems, using tactics that would have seemed insane just months ago. Ships jumping into battle trailing clouds of chaff to confuse enemy sensors. Railguns firing shells filled with quantum disruptors. Ancient electronic warfare techniques combined with neural interfaces. Message from the front lines. A communications officer announced. "The preservation fleet is retreating from the Proxima sector. They're saying our tactics violate the laws of warfare." Hayes allowed himself a small smile. "Tell them that's the point." Dr. Yuki Tanaka's image appeared on a nearby screen, her cybernetic eye glowing with excitement. "Admiral, Sarah, you need to see this. We've finished analyzing the data from their failed chaos weapon." The holographic display shifted, showing complex equations and energy patterns. "They tried to quantify chaos," Yuki explained, "to turn unpredictability into a weapon they could control. But look at what happened when they failed." The display showed the weapon's catastrophic collapse. But now, with deeper sensor data, the quantum fluctuations didn't just destroy their ship. Sarah realized, studying the patterns. They created a cascade effect through their entire network. They're perfect systems. They're not just vulnerable to chaos. They're allergic to it, which explains their latest tactics, Hayes added, bringing up tactical displays showing recent preserver movements. "They're pulling back, creating buffer zones between their forces and ours. They're afraid our contamination will spread." Sarah's tablet chimed with an urgent alert from her research team. They'd been studying the artifacts nonstop, trying to understand the preserver's true nature. What they'd found was staggering. "Admiral," she said, her voice tight with revelation, "we've been thinking about this all wrong. The preservers, their entire civilization, it's not just about maintaining order. It's about preventing something they experienced in their past. Something that terrified them so much they engineered it out of their species." "What did they find?" Hayes asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. "Consciousness," Sarah replied. "True, unpredictable, creative consciousness. They discovered that intelligence naturally tends toward chaos, toward unpredictable leaps of innovation and intuition. So they removed that tendency, made themselves predictable. Perfect. Safe. The implications hit like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't just fighting for their right to exist. They were fighting against beings who had deliberately limited their own potential, who had chosen stagnation over growth. A new alert flashed across the command screens. The preservers had launched a massive offensive, but something was different about their formation. It was less perfect, less geometric, almost desperate. "They're adapting," Hayes observed grimly. "Not effectively, but they're trying. Which means we've already won." Sarah finished. "They're doing exactly what they engineered themselves not to do. They're evolving. Our chaos is infecting their order." The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military history. The preservers attempted to mimic humanity's unpredictable tactics, but their attempts were clumsy, mechanical, like watching a computer try to generate random numbers. Earth's forces responded with true chaos, ships performing maneuvers that looked suicidal until they worked perfectly, weapons combining technologies in ways that shouldn't have been possible, tactics that changed mid-battle based on pure instinct. "Look at their formations," Sarah pointed out as the battle progressed. The more they try to adapt to us, the more their own systems turn against them. They can't handle the cognitive dissonance between their programming and their actions. The preserver fleet began to break apart, not from damage but from internal confusion. Ships moved in conflicting patterns, their perfect coordination shattered by attempts to be unpredictable. Some vessels simply shut down, their systems unable to resolve the paradox of trying to preserve order through chaos. "They're broadcasting," the communications officer announced. "All frequencies, all channels." The message was different this time. Its perfect structure fractured. "Stop. You are changing us. This is not acceptable. We cannot become, cannot return to, cannot." Hayes leaned forward, studying the disintegrating preserver formations. "Send to all ships. Press the advantage. Show them exactly what consciousness can do when it's not afraid of change." Earth's fleet surged forward, each ship acting independently yet somehow part of a greater whole. They moved like a murmuration of starlings, their patterns beautiful in their complexity, impossible to predict yet devastating in their effectiveness. The preservers' retreat turned into a rout, not because their technology had failed, but because their fundamental philosophy couldn't withstand contact with the chaos they'd spent millennia trying to engineer out of existence. As the last preserver ships fled the battlefield, Sarah turned to Hayes. "They'll be back. But next time they'll be different," Hayes finished. "Because we've done something worse than defeat them. We've made them question their own perfection." The victory celebrations across Earth were subdued, tempered by the knowledge that this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven they could fight the preservers, but in doing so, they'd started something far more dangerous than a war. They'd introduced chaos into a system of perfect order, and chaos, once introduced, could never be contained. The war had lasted 6 months, but the final battle began with silence. Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned Earth ship Prometheus, watching as the largest preserver fleet ever assembled dropped out of hyperspace. But something was different about their formation. "They're not maintaining perfect geometry," Admiral Hayes noted, his voice carrying a mix of concern and curiosity. "Look at their positioning. It's almost human," Sarah finished. "They're trying to copy our adaptability, but their ships are fighting against their own programming to do it." Dr. Yuki Tanaka's hologram appeared at the tactical station, her cybernetic systems processing the sensor data. "The quantum instabilities are spreading throughout their fleet. Every time they attempt an unpredictable maneuver, their systems generate cascading errors." The main screen lit up with a transmission from the preserver flagship. The message was unlike any they'd received before. Fragmented, almost emotional. "We offer final opportunity for resolution. Your species has corrupted perfection, introduced uncertainty into certainty. We cannot permit this contamination to spread." Hayes studied the enemy fleet's erratic movements. "They're terrified," he realized. "Not of our weapons or tactics, but of what we represent. The path they abandoned eons ago." Sarah's research team had made one final breakthrough in understanding the artifacts. "Admiral, we've decoded their complete history. The preservers, they were like us once. Chaotic, creative, evolving. But they discovered something that scared them so badly they rewrote their own nature." "What did they find?" Hayes asked. "The infinite." Sarah brought up the translated data. "Their scientists proved that consciousness, true consciousness, has no upper limit. That intelligence could evolve endlessly, becoming something they couldn't predict or control. So they chose to stop, to freeze themselves at a level they could understand." The preserver fleet began to move, but their formation was breaking down further. Ships struggled between their programming's demand for perfect order and their attempts to mimic human unpredictability. "They're coming apart," Yuki observed. "The conflict between their original nature and their programming is reaching critical levels." Hayes opened a channel to all Earth ships. "Execute Operation Genesis. Show them what they've been afraid of all this time." The human fleet moved like a living thing, each ship acting independently, while maintaining an organic, impossible-to-predict cohesion. They'd spent months perfecting this technique, not just randomness, but controlled chaos, the very thing the preservers had tried to engineer out of existence. The battle that followed wasn't really a battle at all. It was a demonstration. Human ships danced through the preserver formation, their maneuvers following patterns that emerged from complexity rather than being predetermined. Ancient weapons combined with bleeding-edge technology in ways that defied tactical analysis. Their ships, Sarah gasped, watching the sensor readings. The quantum instabilities. They're changing the preservers themselves. Our chaos isn't just affecting their technology. It's affecting their engineered DNA. The preserver fleet's attempts at coordination completely collapsed. Some ships maintained their rigid, perfect patterns. Others moved with increasing randomness, and some simply stopped, caught between conflicting imperatives. A new transmission cut through all channels. But this one was different. Individual voices, overlapping, breaking through the collective. What is happening? These thoughts, these feelings, we remember. We were not always. We were once. They're remembering, Sarah whispered. The genetic blocks are breaking down. They're remembering what it was like to be truly conscious. Hayes opened a direct channel to the preserver flagship. You don't have to be afraid. Evolution isn't your enemy. It's your birthright. The response came in fragments, multiple voices speaking as individuals for the first time in millennia. I, cannot control, cannot predict, can choose. Yes, Sarah transmitted back. You can choose. That's what consciousness is. The ability to make choices that aren't predetermined, to become something new. The preserver fleet hung in space, frozen in a moment of collective revelation. Then, ship by ship, their perfect crystalline structures began to change. The rigid geometric patterns softened, became organic, as if the vessels themselves were awakening from a long sleep. Admiral, the tactical officer called out. They're powering down weapons. All of them. And, sir, they're requesting to open diplomatic channels. But not as the preservers. They're identifying themselves by their original species names. Hayes turned to Sarah. Is this a victory? She shook her head, watching as the former preserver ships began moving in new patterns, not human patterns, but not their old perfect formations either. Something new. This isn't a victory or a defeat. It's an evolution. They tried to preserve themselves in amber, but life doesn't work that way. It changes, it grows, it becomes. The next weeks were chaos of a different kind, as thousands of years of enforced stasis broke down across the former preserver civilization. Species after species rediscovered their capacity for growth, for creativity, for unpredictable leaps of innovation. Sarah stood with Hayes in Earth's diplomatic center, watching representatives of newly awakened civilizations arrive for the first true dialogue between equals. They're calling it the Great Awakening, she told him, reading the latest reports. Some are handling it better than others, but they're all changing. Evolution isn't just reasserting itself, it's making up for lost time. And humanity's role in all this? Hayes asked. Sarah smiled, watching as a former preserver diplomat approached, their crystalline form already showing signs of organic adaptation. We're doing what we do best, showing the galaxy that chaos isn't something to fear. It's the force that drives all life forward, even if we don't know where it's driving us. Especially then, Sarah replied, because that's what makes it beautiful. The former preserver reached them, its voice carrying something that had been engineered out of its species eons ago. Wonder. We understand now, it said. Perfect order was a prison. You freed us by showing us what we had forgotten. That true perfection lies in the ability to change. As Earth's diplomatic corps began the complex task of building relationships with civilizations in the midst of radical transformation, Sarah thought about the artifacts that had started it all. They still sat in research labs, their perfect crystalline structures unchanged. But now, They stood as monuments to a failed experiment, the attempt to preserve consciousness in unchanging amber. Humanity had feared these advanced civilizations would destroy them. Instead, they had reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten, that the price of pride is stagnation, but the reward of humility is growth. The age of preservation was over. The age of evolution had begun again.